The Seoul skyline blazed with neon colors that painted the night in blues and purples. 12-year-old Jiho Park kicked at a loose stone on the sidewalk, watching it skitter into the gutter. The Stellar Foundation's charity gala was in full swing. Behind him, but all those fancy adults in their expensive clothes talking about supporting space exploration just made him want to escape. His mother, Dr. Yuna Park, was probably still inside explaining her latest research to some rich donor who pretended to care about alien life. Jiho loved his mom, but these events were torture. All those fake smiles and boring conversations about funding and scientific breakthroughs. He was about to head back inside when he heard it. A soft whimper coming from the alley beside the building. Jiho paused, listening. There it was again. Someone was crying. Curiosity won over caution as he stepped into the shadowy alley. The smell hit him first. Garbage and something else. Something metallic that made his nose wrinkle. Emergency lights from the building next door cast weird shadows that danced on the brick walls. That's when he saw him. A boy about his own age was huddled behind a massive dumpster. Knees pulled up to his chest. His clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks, maybe months. Dirt streaked his face. But what caught Jiho's attention were his eyes, even in the dim light. They seemed to glow with an intelligence that felt ancient, like he'd seen things no kid should ever see. "Hey," Jiho called out softly, taking a careful step forward. He'd learned from nature documentaries that you never approached scared animals too quickly. "Are you okay?" The boy's head snapped up, and for a second, Jiho thought he might bolt like a frightened rabbit. But instead, the kid just stared at him with those strange, knowing eyes. "Jiho." The boy whispered, his voice hoarse like he'd been crying for hours. "I don't have anywhere to go." Something weird happened the moment their eyes locked. Jiho felt a jolt of electricity shoot through his chest, like when you touch a doorknob after walking on carpet. But warm instead of painful. His vision flickered, and suddenly his mind was flooded with images that made no sense. Mathematical equations more complex than anything he'd seen in school scrolled through his brain like a computer screen. Star charts showing constellations he'd never studied appeared behind his eyelids. For just a second, he could see the entire solar system laid out like a 3D map, with glowing lines connecting Earth to distant worlds. Jiho gasped at the exact same moment, his eyes going wide. "Did you see that too?" he breathed. Jiho nodded, not trusting his voice. Something incredible was happening. Something that felt bigger than both of them put together. He took another step closer. And Jiho didn't flinch this time. "When did you last eat?" Jiho asked, noticing how thin the other boy looked. "Yesterday. I think maybe the day before." Jiho's stomach growled loudly, answering for him without thinking. Jiho reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the fancy chocolate bar his mom had given him earlier. "Here, it's imported from Switzerland or something. Mom says it costs more than most people's lunch." Jiho's eyes lit up as he accepted the chocolate with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered, tearing open the wrapper like it contained gold dollars. Jiho ate. Jiho studied his face. There was something familiar about him, like looking into a funhouse mirror that showed you what you might look like if your life had gone completely different. They had the same nose, the same stubborn chin. Even their hair fell the same way across their foreheads. "How long have you been living out here?" Jiho asked, settling down on the cold concrete beside the dumpster. "I'm not sure. Time gets fuzzy when you're always moving." Jiho paused mid-bite. "Sometimes I have dreams about a big house with a garden, and a woman with kind eyes who used to sing to me. But I can't remember if it was real or just something I made up." Jiho's heart clenched. His own mother sang to him sometimes when he couldn't sleep, old Korean lullabies her grandmother had taught her. The thought of not having that, of not having anyone, made his chest ache. "What happened to your family?" he asked gently. Taiho shrugged, but Jiho could see the pain in his eyes. "They disappeared when I was little. One day they were there. Next day I woke up in some government facility. The people there kept doing tests on me, asking weird questions. I ran away as soon as I figured out how to pick the locks. Tests? What kind of tests? Blood samples, brain scans, making me solve puzzles that hurt my head." Taeho's voice got quieter. "They kept saying I was special, but not in a good way. More like I was some kind of science experiment that went wrong." Jiho felt anger building in his chest. How could adults do that to a kid? That's horrible. No, one should treat you like that. For the first time since they'd started talking, Taeho smiled. It was small and uncertain, but genuine. "You're the first person in years who's talked to me like I'm human. Because you are human," Jiho said firmly. "And you're not alone anymore." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Taeho. They'd known each other for maybe 10 minutes, but Jiho felt more connected to this stranger than he did to most of his classmates. It was like finding a missing piece of himself he hadn't even known was lost. Footsteps echoed from the mouth of the alley, followed by his mother's worried voice. "Jiho, where are you, sweetheart?" Dr. Yuna Park appeared at the alley entrance, her elegant evening dress looking out of place against the grimy urban backdrop. Her eyes quickly took in the scene, her son sitting beside a clearly homeless boy, both of them looking up at her with matching expressions of defiance. And who? Jiho scrambled to his feet and moved to stand protectively in front of Taeho. "Mom, this is Taeho. He's my brother." The words came out with absolute certainty, even though logically Jiho knew they made no sense. He'd never seen this boy before tonight. But every instinct in his body screamed that they belonged together. Dr. Park's scientific mind immediately began cataloging details. The boy's facial bone structure was remarkably similar, their posture, their hand gestures. Even the way they both tucked their hair behind their left ears. It was like watching mirror images of each other, but it was their eyes that made her breath catch. Both boys were watching her with the same intense intelligence, the same quiet desperation for acceptance, and there was something else. Something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The air around them seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Her tablet in her purse was beeping softly, an alert from her research equipment back at the lab. The same kind of alert she got when they detected unusual energy signatures from deep space. "What's your full name, sweetheart?" she asked Taeho, her voice gentle but professionally curious. Taeho ... "I think sometimes in my dreams people call me something else, but I can never remember what." Taeho's hand unconsciously reached for Jiho's, and the moment their fingers touched, Dr. Park's tablet erupted in a symphony of alerts. Energy readings that shouldn't exist on Earth were suddenly flooding her senses, but instead of fear, she felt an overwhelming wave of maternal protectiveness wash over her. Whatever was happening here, these children were at the center of it, and if Jiho claimed this boy as his brother, then Taeho was family now. That night, Dr. Park loaded both boys into her car and drove them home through the neon-lit streets of Seoul. As they settled into sleep in Jiho's room, she sat at her computer, watching energy readings that defied every law of physics she knew. Something extraordinary was beginning, and tomorrow, the entire galaxy would start to take notice. 3 weeks had passed since Taeho joined the Park family, and their quiet Seoul apartment had transformed into something that belonged more in a science fiction movie than real life. Every morning brought new impossibilities that Dr. Yuna Park struggled to explain to herself, let alone to her colleagues. It started small. Jiho and Taiho would finish each other's sentences, which wasn't unusual for close friends. But then they began speaking in perfect unison, saying things neither had planned to say. When Dr. Park asked Jiho to call Taiho for dinner from the next room, she watched in amazement as Taiho appeared before Jiho even opened his mouth. "How did you know dinner was ready?" she asked. Taiho shrugged, looking genuinely puzzled. "I just felt it." Like Jiho was thinking it really loud. The math homework incident was what convinced Dr. Park to call in a research team. She'd found both boys working on Jiho's calculus assignment together, casually solving problems that graduate students struggled with. When she looked over their shoulders, they weren't just getting the right answers. They were inventing entirely new ways to solve equations that shouldn't have been possible. "Where did you learn this?" she asked, staring at mathematical formulas that looked like they belonged in advanced theoretical physics textbooks. "We didn't learn it," Jiho said, tapping his pencil against the paper. "It's just there, like remembering a song you forgot you knew." Dr. Domi Kim arrived the next day with a van full of equipment that looked like it belonged in a hospital crossed with a space station. Domi had been Dr. Park's research partner for 15 years, specializing in xenobiology and quantum genetics. If anyone could make sense of what was happening, it would be her. The first round of tests seemed normal enough. Blood samples, brain scans, genetic analysis. But when the results came back, both women stared at the data in stunned silence. "Yuna, this is impossible," Domi whispered, pointing at the holographic display floating above her tablet. The DNA helix slowly rotated, glowing with sections that pulsed in colors she'd never seen in human genetics before. "Look at chromosome 17. These sequences don't exist in any Earth-based life form." Dr. Park leaned closer, her heart racing. The alien genetic markers were woven through the boy's DNA like golden threads in a tapestry, so perfectly integrated that they looked like they'd always been there. Could this be some kind of mutation, maybe caused by cosmic radiation? No way. This is deliberate genetic engineering, but from technology decades ahead of anything we have. Domi pulled up another screen showing comparative analysis. "I've seen these patterns before, in the archives from the Zephyrian contact 30 years ago." The Zephyrians, Dr. Park remembered studying the classified files in graduate school. First contact with an alien species that looked almost angelic. Tall, graceful beings with crystalline technology that seemed to sing. They'd appeared in Earth's sky for exactly 72 hours, shared advanced scientific knowledge, and warned of something they called the Great Hunger approaching from deep space. Then they'd vanished without explanation. "But that's impossible," Dr. Park said. "The Zephyrians disappeared in 2054. Jiho was born 8 years later, and Taiho," she paused, "actually, we don't know when Taiho was born. He doesn't remember." Before Domi could respond, every piece of equipment in the room started beeping at once. Emergency alerts flashed across screens as energy readings spiked beyond anything their instruments were designed to measure. Both women ran toward the boy's bedroom, following the source of the disturbance. What they found made them stop dead. In the doorway, Jiho and Taiho sat on the floor facing each other, legs crossed, eyes closed in deep concentration. But they weren't alone. The air around them shimmered like heat waves, and slowly, three-dimensional star maps began materializing. Out of nothing, entire galaxies rotated around the boys, showing trade routes and navigation paths that connected thousands of worlds. The boys' voices spoke as one. But the words carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. It was like listening to a choir that existed in multiple dimensions. "The Devourers come. The bond awakens. Two must become one to save the many. Dr. Park felt ice run through her veins. She'd heard that phrase before, in the classified Zephyrian transmissions. It was part of their final warning before they disappeared. The star maps suddenly zoomed in on Earth's solar system, showing massive shadows moving between the outer planets. Dark shapes that seemed to eat the light round them, leaving holes in space itself, and approaching from the opposite direction, a fleet of crystalline ships that could only be Zephyrian. The convergence begins. The boys continued in their otherworldly course. The children of two worlds must choose, stand together, or watch the galaxy burn. The holograms flickered and died. Jiho and Teo's eyes snapped open, both looking confused and slightly dizzy. "What just happened?" Jiho asked, rubbing his temples. "I feel like I just woke up from the weirdest dream." Dr. Park knelt beside them, trying to keep her voice calm. "What were you two doing just now?" "We were just sitting here talking about space," Tao said innocently. "But then everything got fuzzy." "Did something happen? You don't remember the star maps, the voices?" Both boys looked genuinely confused. "What star maps?" Jiho asked. Dr. Park exchanged a look with Domi. Whatever was happening to these children, they had no conscious control over it. They were like radio receivers picking up signals from across the galaxy, completely unaware of the cosmic drama playing out through them. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Jiho said quietly. "I keep having these dreams about a place with purple skies and cities that float in the air, and Taiho is always there with me. We're older. And I don't know, important somehow. Like, people are depending on us. I have the same dreams." Taiho nodded eagerly. "And sometimes I hear voices calling us bridge children. They say we're the key to something big. But I never understand what they mean. Bridge children." Dr. Park felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. In the Zephyrian archives, there had been references to hybrid experiments, attempts to create beings who could interface with both human and Zephyrian technology. The project had been declared a failure when the test subjects disappeared. But what if they hadn't failed? What if they'd simply been hidden, waiting for the right moment to awaken? That night, after the boys had gone to sleep, Dr. Park sat in her study composing the most important message of her career. Her fingers trembled as she typed the emergency code that would route her communication directly. "To the Global Defense Council, this is Dr. Yuna Park. Cinebiology Division, Priority Alpha. I have evidence of active alien genetic manipulation in human subjects. Request immediate consultation with command." The Zephyrian prophecies may be coming true. She hesitated before hitting send. Once this message went out, there would be no taking it back. Government agents would descend on their home. The boys would become subjects rather than sons. But as she looked at the data Domi had collected, she knew she had no choice. The galaxy was waking up, and somehow two boys from Seoul were standing at the center of it, all as if responding to her thoughts. Every deep space monitoring station on Earth suddenly lit up with alerts. Massive energy signatures were approaching from the edge of the solar system. The Zephyrians were returning after 30 years of silence, but the second wave of readings made her blood run cold. Behind the Zephyrian fleet, space itself seemed to be unraveling. Something vast and hungry was following them, something that devoured stars and left only darkness in its wake. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity's best hope was sleeping peacefully in the next room, completely unaware that the fate of every living thing in the universe might depend on two boys who still argued over who got the last piece of pizza. The first sign wasn't there. Massive ships appearing on radar screens across the globe. It was the music. Every radio telescope on Earth began picking up the same ethereal melody at exactly 3:47 a.m. Seoul time. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, like wind chimes made of starlight, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Within minutes, observatories from Chile to Hawaii were tracking the source, a fleet of crystalline vessels that looked more like living organisms than traditional spacecraft. The Zephyrian ships moved through space with grace that defied physics. Each vessel appeared to be grown rather than built, with surfaces that rippled and flowed like liquid crystal. The largest ship, easily the size of Manhattan, resembled a massive flower bud carved from diamond and sapphire. As it approached Earth's orbital defense platform, its petals slowly began to unfold, revealing chambers that pulsed with soft, organic light. In Seoul, Dr. Yuna Park was dragged from sleep by her emergency communicator screaming alerts. She stumbled to her computer, still in her pajamas, and watched in awe as the live feed from the International Space Station showed the alien fleet ranging itself in perfect formation down Earth. "My God," she whispered, recognizing the crystalline technology from the classified files she'd studied years ago. "They're really back." The Global Defense Council had mobilized within hours. Every world leader who could make it to Geneva was there in person, while others appeared via hologram. The atmosphere in the emergency assembly hall crackled with tension as humanity prepared for its second contact with an alien species. Dr. Park found herself in the front row, still struggling to believe she was there. 24 hours ago, she'd been a xenobiologist studying theoretical alien life. Now she was humanity's foremost expert on the beings currently surrounding their planet. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the lead Zephyrian vessel. The chamber was breathtakingly beautiful, with walls that seemed to be alive, shifting between colors that had no names in human language. Crystalline formations grew from the floor like frozen music, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with floating particles of light. Then she appeared. Ambassador Sora was tall and willowy, easily 7 feet in height, with limbs that moved with liquid grace. Her skin was the most striking feature. It shifted constantly between deep ocean blue and molten silver, creating patterns that swirled across her body like living tattoos. Her eyes were enormous, multifaceted like jewels, and when she moved, it was as if she was dancing even while standing still. But it was her voice that truly marked her as otherworldly. When she spoke, it wasn't just sound. It was harmony itself. Every word carried multiple tones that resonated in frequencies human ears could barely detect, creating an effect that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. "People of Earth," Sora began, her voice filling the assembly hall like a choir of angels, "we greet you in friendship. But we bring grave news. The ancient enemy has found us. The Devourers are coming." The main display shifted to show deep space, imagery that made several delegates gasp in horror. Vast regions where stars should have been were simply empty. Not dark, empty. It was as if something had reached into space and deleted entire solar systems, leaving wounds in reality itself. 30 years ago, we came to your world seeking allies, Sora continued. We shared what knowledge we could and warned of the approaching darkness. But we underestimated how quickly the Devourers would spread. They have consumed half the galaxy. Our home world. Her voice faltered for the first time. Our home world no longer exists. A murmur of shock rippled through the assembly. Dr. Park felt her heart clench as she watched this elegant being struggle with what was obviously overwhelming grief. "We are all that remains," Sora said quietly. 15 million survivors from a civilization that once numbered in the billions. We come seeking refuge, but we also bring hope. The display changed again, this time showing genetic sequences that Dr. Park recognized immediately. It was the same alien DNA she'd found in Jiho and Taiho, But now she could see the full scope of the modification. The genetic engineering was incredibly sophisticated, weaving alien capabilities into human DNA so seamlessly that it looked natural. 30 years ago, we attempted to create bridge beings, Sora explained. Hybrids who could interface with both human creativity and Zephyrian harmonic technology. The project was declared a failure when our test subjects vanished from our monitoring systems. We believed they had died. We were wrong. The screen shifted to show surveillance footage from the Park household. Dr. Park watched in amazement as the display showed Jiho and Taiho creating the star map projection she'd witnessed. But from angles her team hadn't captured, the boys were surrounded by energy fields that bent light itself, creating pockets of space where different physical laws seemed to apply. They didn't fail, Sora said with what sounded like reverence. They evolved. These children carry what we call the template, genetic modifications that allow them to channel the deepest aspects of both our species. Human emotional intelligence combined with Zephyrian quantum manipulation, but the bond only activates through genuine love. Secretary General Williams stood up from the front row. Are you saying these children are weapons? Sora's iridescent features shifted to what might have been sadness. Not weapons, bridges. The Devourers consume by breaking down the bonds that hold matter and energy together. They can devour our technology because it follows predictable quantum patterns. They can consume your technology because it follows logical engineering principles. But they cannot comprehend the synthesis of emotion-driven creativity and harmonic science at that exact moment, halfway around the world in Seoul. Jiho and Taiho were eating breakfast when the pain hit them. Both boys doubled over simultaneously, clutching their chests as waves of energy coursed through their bodies. The kitchen lights flickered and died, then blazed back to life with impossible brightness. Something's wrong, Jiho gasped, reaching for Taiho's hand. The moment their fingers touched, the energy stabilized, flowing between them in visible streams of golden light. Round their apartment building, reality itself began to shift. The air shimmered like heat waves, and geometric patterns that to look at directly began forming in the space round the structure. Neighbors peered out their windows in confusion as their building seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. 3 blocks away, a Devourer scout that had been invisibly creeping through Seoul's underground suddenly recoiled as if it had touched a live wire. The creature, a writhing mass of darkness that fed on the quantum foundations of matter, fled back toward space, unable to comprehend the defensive matrix that had suddenly blazed to life round the 2 boys dotted. Geneva, Sora paused mid-sentence, her jeweled eyes going wide. Through the quantum link that connected all Zephyrians, she could feel the boy's awakening power like a song of hope cutting through the darkness of her people's despair. They're activating, she whispered, then louder. The bridge is forming. Even now, the children are learning to protect not just themselves, but everyone round them. Dr. Park stood up from her seat, her voice shaking with a mixture of pride and terror. You're talking about my sons, their children, not your experimental weapons. Yes, Sora agreed, turning those impossible eyes toward her. They're your sons. That is precisely why this works. The template only functions when the subjects form genuine emotional bonds. Love is the key that unlocks abilities that span galaxies. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over everyone present. Humanity was being asked to trust refugees who had once conducted genetic experiments on their children. But those same experiments might be the only thing standing between Earth and cosmic annihilation. The question, Sora continued softly, is whether humanity will accept refugees who were once viewed as potential invaders, and whether these remarkable children will choose to fight for a galaxy that sees them as experiments rather than the beloved sons they truly are. Through the quantum link, Sora felt the boys' response even before they were consciously aware of it themselves. It came not in words, but in pure emotional conviction that blazed across space like a beacon of defiance. We protect the ones we love. All of them. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. And at its heart stood two boys from Seoul who had just learned that their love for each other might be powerful enough to save the universe. The construction of Harmony Station had taken only 6 weeks. But those were 6 weeks that changed everything humanity thought they knew about physics, engineering, and what was possible when two species worked together. Dr. Hannah Choi stood on the observation deck, watching human welders work alongside Zephyrian harmonic architects 300 miles above Earth. The sight still took her breath away, where human technology relied on bolts, circuits, and mechanical precision. Zephyrian builders sang their materials into existence. Crystalline structures grew from their voices, responding to emotional frequencies that human science was only beginning to understand. It's like watching music become solid, she murmured to her assistant, Park Min-jun, who was frantically taking notes on his tablet. The station itself was unlike anything that had ever existed. The outer hull looked like a massive lotus flower, made of metal and crystal, with petals that could open and close to channel different types of energy. Human plasma cannons were integrated with Zephyrian harmonic resonators, creating weapons that could either destroy incoming threats or convert them into pure energy. But the real marvel was the control center, where the impossible had become. Routine. Jiho and Taiho stood at the heart of the station, their hands clasped together as streams of golden energy flowed between them. Round them, holographic displays showed star maps, energy readings, and tactical information from across 3 solar systems. But these weren't just computer screens. They were living projections that responded to the boys' thoughts and emotions. Contact established with Lunar Base, Taiho announced, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance that had become second nature to him over the past month. Bridge pair Kim Sujin and Lee Jae-wook report full synchronization. Diho nodded, his eyes still, closed in concentration. Mars Outpost is online too. The Nakamura twins are connecting with the Asteroid Belt Early Warning Network. Dr. Park watched from the command center, still struggling to believe what she was seeing. Her sons, her 12-year-old sons, were coordinating a defense network that spanned the entire inner solar system. They spoke in perfect unity, sharing consciousness not just with each other, but with dozens of other bridge children who had been discovered in the weeks following her. Zephyrian rival, status report, she said into her headset, trying to sound professional despite the surreal nature of the situation. All stations reporting green across the board. Came the response from Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, the Earth Defense Force Liaison. We've got 47 bridge pairs active worldwide, and they're all syncing up beautifully. It's like watching a neural network come online. Through the massive windows of the command center, Dr. Park could see the approach of something that made her blood run cold. The Devour advanced scouts were still 3 days out. But their presence was already affecting local space. Stars seemed dimmer in their wake, and the cosmic background radiation was developing dead zones where reality itself seemed to be breaking down. Ambassador Sora stood beside her, the Zephyrian's iridescent skin shifting to darker hues as she sensed the approaching threat. They consume more than matter and energy, she explained quietly. They devour the very concept of existence. Where they pass, the universe forgets that anything was ever there. But the boys can stop them. The bridge children don't fight the devourers directly, Sora said. They create pockets of reinforced reality, zones where the emotional bonds between conscious beings become so strong that they literally hold space-time together. The devourers cannot comprehend such connections, so they cannot dissolve them. In the control center, Jiho suddenly opened his eyes, his face pale with concentration. I can feel them. He whispered, his voice carrying across the station's internal communication system. The Devourers, it's hard to describe. They're not evil. Exactly. They're just empty. Like they've forgotten what it means to exist with others. Taiho squeezed his brother's hand tighter, and the energy flow between them intensified. They see everything as food because they can't remember being fed by love instead of consumption. It's actually kind of sad. Then, we show them what they're missing. Jiho replied, his human determination amplifying their shared consciousness until it blazed like a star. We show them that there's another way to exist in the universe, across the globe. Other bridge pairs began responding to the Soul Boy's call. In Tokyo, twin sisters Yuki and Rei Tanaka activated the Pacific Defense Grid, their connection creating barriers that could withstand the gravitational pull of black holes in New York. Best friends Marcus Williams and David Chen, two kids, who had found each other in a homeless shelter, powered up the Atlantic Ray with the strength of their chosen brotherhood. The pattern repeated worldwide. Children who had been experiments, orphans, refugees, and outcasts were becoming the guardians of human civilization. Their shared trait wasn't genetic compatibility. It was the ability to form unbreakable emotional bonds despite impossible circumstances. Incoming transmission from the outer perimeter. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez announced. The first wave of Devourers just hit the Jupiter sensor network on the main screen. The assembled commandos watched in horror as the gas giant's monitoring station simply vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. The Devourers consumed them so completely that the universe couldn't remember they had ever existed. They'll be here in 18 hours, Sora said grimly. Are your children ready? Dr. Park looked at her sons, who were now surrounded by a sphere of pure golden energy that made the air itself sing with harmonic frequencies. Jiho and Taiho had their eyes closed, but she could see tears streaming down their faces, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sensation of being connected to dozens of other young minds across the solar system. Mom, Jiho called out through the comm system, his voice somehow reaching her despite the energy barrier around him. Tell the news feeds that we're not fighting for Earth or Zephyr. We're fighting for a home. And home includes everyone who believes in love over hunger. Taiho's voice joined his brother's in perfect harmony. The Devourers think strength comes from taking everything for yourself. But we know better. Real strength comes from choosing to share everything with the people you care about. The energy sphere around them pulsed. And suddenly every screen in the command center lit up with tactical displays showing the positions of all 47 bridge pairs. Worldwide, they were connected now in a network of pure emotional resonance, creating a defense grid unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They're ready, Dr. Park whispered, her heart swelling with pride and terror in equal measure. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The Devourers had accelerated their approach, drawn perhaps by the very connections the bridge children were creating. The final battle for the solar system was beginning. But as Dr. Park watched her sons stand together at the heart of humanity's greatest defense, she realized something that filled her with unexpected hope. The Devourers might be older, stronger, and more technologically advanced than anything Earth or Zephyr could field, but they had never faced an enemy that fought not for conquest or survival, but for the simple right to call someone family. And that, she suspected, was going to make all the difference in the universe. The war was about to begin. But humanity had already won its most important victory, proving that love could literally hold reality together when everything else fell apart. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Binary Suns, where humanity first proved that love could literally hold the fabric of space together. Now, 17-year-old Jiho and Taiho stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge, the most advanced vessel ever created. The ship itself was a work of art, half human engineering, half Zephyrian harmonic architecture, with a living hull that pulsed with the heartbeat of its crew. The bridge was unlike anything from Earth's old science fiction movies. Instead of cold metal and flickering screens, crystalline formations grew from the walls, responding to the emotions of everyone aboard. When the crew felt confident, the crystals glowed warm gold. When they were worried, deep blue patterns swirled through the organic surfaces. Fleet status report, Jiho said, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who had helped save the galaxy before he could legally drive a car. All ships reporting ready, came the response from Captain Rodriguez aboard the human vessel New Soul. Bridge pairs are synchronized across the entire fleet. We've got representatives from 47 different worlds, and they're all operating in perfect harmony. Through the massive viewport, the combined fleet stretched out like a constellation of hope. Human ships with their angular designs flew alongside flowing Zephyrian vessels, former Devourer entities that had learned to create, rather than consume, drifted nearby. Their dark forms now shot through with veins of silver light. Even the crystalline collective, living rock beings from the Andromeda galaxy, had sent their massive stone ships to join the final confrontation. At the center of it all loomed the Devourer mother entity, a creature so vast it had its own gravitational field. It looked like a stone made solid, with tendrils of pure entropy that stretched across light years. Where it passed, stars went out, planets crumbled to dust, and entire solar systems simply ceased to exist. But today would be different. Taiho, are you ready? Jiho asked, extending his hand to his brother. Taiho smiled, the same warm expression he'd worn 5 years ago, when they first met behind that dumpster in Seoul. I've been ready since the moment I met you. Their fingers touched, and immediately the ship responded. The harmony's edge came alive round them, its hybrid systems merging with their consciousness until they couldn't tell where the vessel ended and their thoughts began. Through the quantum link, they could feel every member of their crew, every bridge pair in the fleet, every being who had chosen cooperation over conquest. Mother entity, Jiho spoke, his voice carrying across space through harmonic resonance. We're not here to fight you. We're here to offer you something you've never had before. The massive creature paused, its entropy field flickering with what might have been confusion for eons. The Devourers had known only consumption. They ate matter, energy, and even the memories of what once existed. The concept of communication without conquest was as alien to them as breathing underwater would be to a human. What could you possibly offer us? The mother entity's voice was like the sound of galaxies dying, a rumble that made reality itself shiver. We are hunger itself. We consume all. That is our nature. Taiho's voice joined his brother's, creating harmonics that made the space round them shine with impossible colors. We offer you family. We offer you the chance to be part of something instead of just taking everything away. The Devourer scouts that had been circling the fleet suddenly stopped their advance. For the first time in their existence, they were hearing concepts they couldn't process. Love, sacrifice, the choice to protect others even when it cost you everything. You don't understand. The mother entity replied, but its voice carried less certainty than before. We must consume. It is all we know, all we are. We know what it's like to be alone, Jiho said, memories of his own loneliness before meeting Taiho flooding through the quantum link. We know what it's like to think that taking is the only way to survive. But there's another way round them. The entire fleet began to glow as hundreds of bridge pairs linked their consciousness. Humans who had found family in strangers, Zephyrians who had learned to trust again after losing everything. Former Devourers who had discovered the joy of creation, The combined emotional resonance created a field of pure harmony that stretched across the battlefield. "This is what we're offering," Taiho said, opening their shared consciousness completely. "Not just existence, but belonging. Not just survival, but love." The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. The mother entity, which had devoured galaxies, without a moment's hesitation, suddenly experienced something it had never known before: the warmth of connection, the strength that came from choosing to protect others, the profound satisfaction of being part of something larger than yourself. For the first time in cosmic history, the Devourers stopped consuming and started to change. The mother entity's form shifted, its dark entropy fields lightening to silver, then gold. Then something beyond color entirely. Smaller Devourers throughout the galaxy began transforming as well, some choosing to become guardians of the spaces between stars, others learning to seed new life in the voids they had once created. The mother entity's voice was filled with wonder. We choose to belong. The war that had raged for eons ended not with victory, but with understanding. The universe had learned that even its most destructive forces could be transformed through the simple act of offering inclusion instead of isolation. 6 months later, Dr. Yuna Park stood in the main hall of the Interspecies Academy, watching her son's teacher class that would have been impossible to imagine when they first met. Human children worked alongside young Zephyrians, their projects supervised by reformed Devourer entities who had become some of the galaxy's most passionate teachers. "Today, we are going to plant a star garden in the consume sector," Diho explained. To his mixed species class, the Devourer Collective has agreed to help us restore 3 solar systems that were lost in the old wars. A small former Devourer entity, now calling itself Spark, raised what might have been a hand. "Will the new stars have planets where life can grow?" "That's the plan," Taiho grinned. "And you're going to help design the ecosystem. Who knows, maybe, in a few million years, some of those planets will produce their own bridge children." Dr. Park felt tears in her eyes as she watched the lesson continue. Her sons had grown from scared children into the foundation of a new kind of civilization. The Academy now orbited Earth like a small moon, housing thousands of students from across the galaxy, all learning humanity's greatest lesson: that strength comes not from what you can take, but from what you choose to give. Ambassador Sora, now a permanent Earth resident with an apartment in Seoul just blocks from where the boys first met, joined Dr. Park at the observation window. "Any regrets?" Sora asked, her iridescent features warm with contentment. Dr. Park smiled, watching Jiho and Taiho help their students design solar systems where different species could thrive together. "Only one. I wish I'd brought both boys home sooner." As Earth's sun set behind them, casting the Academy in warm golden light, the 2 boys who had once huddled behind a dumpster in Seoul stood together as teachers, leaders, and the living proof that love really could transform the universe. The message they had carried from that first night now echoed through 1,000 worlds, in a universe vast and cold. The warmest thing of all is the moment someone says, "You're my family now." And across the galaxy, in languages that had never existed before the war, children of 100 different species were learning to say those same words to each other, ensuring that the legacy of 2 boys from Seoul would continue long after. The stars themselves had learned to sing lullabies. The universe had found its heart, and it beat with the rhythm of brotherhood.